So you started out there. This would have been in the early 70s.
Yes.
Now,
74.
74. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, maybe just a couple of years. I think at some point you decided to get into politics.
I did.
In 76.
76.
I mean, what happened? What inspired
I'd always
this?
wanted to run for Congress.
Okay.
Yeah, there was no deep underlying meaning to it. I'd always wanted to run for Congress.
No politicians in the family up until that time?
In the family?
Way back, yeah.
Yeah, my Uncle Fred,
Your Uncle Fred.
was my father's oldest brother, the
Yeah.
eldest brother,
Yeah.
was a judge in Philadelphia.
Okay.
That's it.
Was he elected or appointed?
He was elected. He had also been a Philadelphia city councilman
Oh, okay.
back in the day, I mean way back in the day, and had been an unsuccessful candidate for mayor of Philadelphia way back in the day.
Well, at least you had the little political gene in there
Well, that's
somewhere.
right. Someplace there was
Something.
someplace there was a
leapt
screwed up
out,
gene.
and
Yeah,
in 76, you. So what? Didn't the incumbent congressman was like a Republican?
Yeah, Gary Brown.
Gary Brown.
Fine guy.
And he was from like Kalamazoo,
He was from Schoolcraft,
Yeah.
south of Kalamazoo.
And so you decided to run as a Republican.
Yes.
Challenge him in a primary.
Yes.
That's tough to do.
Yes, it was.
Well, I mean, you might have gotten your Calhoun County support anyway, did you? Did you do very well in your home county?
I did all right. At that time, the district was essentially Calhoun, Kalamazoo County, Branch County, and parts of surrounding.
Right. Well, did you get it out? You evidently didn't totally get it out of your system.
No, I don't think you ever do that.
No. So, in other words, was it a learning experience? Did you
Oh,
learn?
yeah, it was a learning
Yeah.
experience, and it was not a bad experience.
So after it was over, then what? Did you get into local politics?
I got into local politics in 1979, was elected to the Battle Creek City Commission.
And then how did that go? How long were you?
That went very well, enjoyed it. Was elected mayor of Battle Creek in 1985, and to the state senate in 1986.
How were you able to juggle your practice and your political duties? Did your political duties impinge on your time as a
Well,
practitioner?
impinge is probably not a bad word. Impingement, yes, a little bit of impingement, but nevertheless, I worked my butt off, and with the approval and assent of my wife,
Right.
and was able to do both.
Right. Now, you're mayor of Battle Creek, and I think a seat, didn't it open up in 86? Was it open, or was there an incumbent Democrat in there, or what?
In the Senate.
Harry
DeMasso retired.
In Senate, yeah. Harry DeMasso
Harry
retired in
retired.
86.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you decided to run to succeed him.
Yes.
And what happened then? I mean, what?
Well, it was an interesting primary.
The district was
which
like
I won.
Calhoun
The
and
district was
Eaton?
Calhoun and Eaton, and a small part of Ingham.
Okay.
Holt, in fact, was in
okay.
the district,
All
but
right.
that was Calhoun and Eaton was
The dominant.
what the district
And
was.
Calhoun was by far the biggest.
Well,
Yeah.
Calhoun is
Yeah.
about 150,000, 152,000. Eaton at that point was probably about 90.
90, yeah.
So anyhow, yeah, and then this little part of Ingham up here.
Yeah. So you ran in the primary.
I did.
What? Do you have an opponent then?
Yes, it was
Ernie Nash.
It was an opponent, and the opponent was in fact Ernie Nash.
State
Representative Ernie
He was an
Nash.
incumbent state rep.
from
Okay.
Bellevue, yes.
But he was from Eaton County, which
Yeah.
was a smaller county. So you won that,
Yeah.
and it was pretty much a Republican district. So you won.
Yeah, pretty
in
heavily
election.
Republican.
Although it was a terrible Republican year, 86. You may remember.
Yeah.
You know, Jim Blanchard,
Yeah.
the sponsor of
Yeah.
our little talk here,
Yeah.
won a resounding reelection.
Who
victory.
became a good friend, by the way.
So you come into the state senate, a freshman. What was your reaction to what you found in the state capitol? Because this is the first time, really, wasn't it, that you had any experience in state government?
Yes.
What was your reaction? What did you think?
Well, first, my experience in local government served me well. And that's one of the things that I have preached since then to people who want to run for the legislature. It will be very helpful if you have some experience in local government at the city level or at the county level, township level, because so much of what the legislature does has to do with its relationship with local government. So that served me well, and I noticed that right away as compared to members who did not have any experience in
So
local
there were
government.
people actually probably there for some time in the Senate, but they hadn't had any real local government experience before they'd been elected. So even though you were a freshman, you actually, had a little step on it.
I did,
Yeah.
and it was great. It was very helpful. But I loved the state Senate. I mean, it was the glorious preterm limit years where there were mentors in the Senate of both parties who would be helpful to you, whether you were a member of their party or a member of the opposite party.
Who were the ones that you remembered most at the
John
very
Engler
beginning? John Engler was
Majority
there.
Leader.
Yeah.
Harry Gast.
Yeah.
Dan DeGrow.
Right.
On the Republican side, on the D side, Art Miller was an excellent help. John Francis Kelly.
Right.
And others in that first term, and we the old can't we all just get along? We all did just get along. It was fine, and when there was a problem, I think we solved it most of the time pretty constructively. So I enjoyed that first term in the Senate, and felt it was quite a good learning experience, and I had no compunction whatsoever in approaching John Engler or Harry Gast or Dan DeGrow or Art Miller or Lana Pollock or John Kelly or someone saying, okay, here's a problem. I don't quite understand this. Fill me in. So it worked. The place worked.
And it was a fairly closely divided Senate, even though the Republicans had control. It was 2018.
Yeah, it was 2018.
Democrats controlled the House.
Yep.
And Jim Blanchard was a Democrat, was governor. So that was the first term.
Yep. And Martha Griffiths was lieutenant governor.
That's right.
So any ties were broken.
That's right.
On the Democratic side.
That's right. What did you think of Martha Griffiths?
I loved her. She was wonderful.
Was she a good presiding officer?
Yeah, she was fine.
Good. That's good. Let me ask you about one thing that came up for a vote in the last year you were in your first term in the Senate, which nobody really thinks about or talks about nowadays, and that is emergency manager. I don't know if you even remember, because I asked Ken Sikkema,
Yep.
who was in the House.
He was in the House
at that time, and he voted for it. That original legislation passed almost unanimously in the House and Senate. It was not a partisan issue at all. It was sponsored by, I think, John Engler and Dick Posthumus in the Senate.
Probably.
And Jim Blanchard signed it, okay? And everybody was fairly happy with it until, you got into the 2000s.
Of
and this
late,
is way
yes.
back. 10, 15 years later, and then it started to be applied to more and more cities. And then, of course, Rick Snyder came in as governor in 2011. He says, it's too weak. We need to strengthen the emergency manager law. And at that point, everything diverged. It became a very partisan issue. I'm just curious, looking back at the history, what is your thought? Do you ever even remember this being debated very strenuously?
No, there was no strenuous debate. Had there been, I would have remembered it.
Yeah.
And I'm certain that I supported it because I felt it was good government.
Yeah,
I think
you did. You voted for
things,
it. Yeah.
Things that we had to do. This was one of the things that we had to do to clean up some incipient problems out there in the various jurisdictions that we had.
Did you have any feeling way later, almost 2 decades later, when the wheels came off the buggy on emergency manager, at least according to the Democrats, saying this is a terrible law, this should not be allowed, the governor and the state should not come in Bigfoot and smash down local governments and take away their power? What's your feeling about all that?
My feeling is that the emergency manager concept is still a good concept, still a workable concept. I think one has to be careful where one applies it, and one has to be aware, probably now more than ever, people are going to be offended with the emergency manager concept if it comes to my town. I don't want you here. Well, your government is broke. You've laid off half your police force and half your firefighters. The roads are in horrible condition, and on and on and on. And the revenue outlook for this community is terrible. We need to have someone come in, pick up the pieces, try to put them back together, and structure or I should say restructure, the government for this jurisdiction so that there is some future. And I think that concept is a good one.